Welcome back to the deep dive. To our resident learner out there, we are so glad you are joining us today. Have you ever felt like there's a secret unspoken code to getting exceptional service at a really nice restaurant?
Oh, yeah. That feeling of walking in and suddenly realizing you don't speak the local language.
Exactly. Or, just trying to decipher one of those ridiculously fancy menus without sounding foolish. Well, today, we are cracking that exact code.
We really are. Because the difference between just, getting fed and actually curating a dining experience is, well, it's entirely linguistic.
Right. We are looking at this fascinating breakdown of the linguistics of dining out. We're contrasting basic functional English, which is basically just your survival guide for getting calories.
The bare minimum to get a plate of food.
Yeah, exactly. Contrasting that with advanced, sophisticated communication, which is really a masterclass in social strategy.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Because walking into a restaurant is much more than a simple transaction, right? It's a whole social ritual.
It's an incredibly complex ritual. And it starts the absolute second you walk through the door.
A chronological start, right at the host stand.
Exactly. If you look at how a beginner versus let's call them a master, navigates that exact same physical space, it's wild. They use completely different linguistic tools.
So, what's the basic approach then?
The basic approach is just functional. You walk up and say, "A table for two, please." Or maybe they ask if you have a reservation, and you just say, "Yes, it's under my name."
Which is fine, right? I mean, it's polite. It gets the job done.
It gets the job done, sure, but it's highly transactional. The advanced approach, though, it gets very specific and, well, strategic. Instead of a direct statement like, "I want to book a table," they use softer language, the conditional tense.
Like, "I was hoping to book."
Yes, I was hoping to book. It's so much softer. It frames the interaction not as a demand, but as a polite inquiry. It invites the host to collaborate with you.
Oh, wow. It's like you're playing a completely different game. Basic ordering feels like playing a simple game of checkers. But this advanced speaker, they're playing 3D social chess.
That's a great way to put it, 3D social chess. Every single word is a strategic move designed to, shape the future of their entire evening.
And it really shows when they try to shape the physical environment, like asking for a specific table.
Right. They don't just say, "Give me a good table." They use very specific vocabulary. They'll request a quiet nook or a booth.
But what if they get a bad table, like right next to the kitchen or the bathroom? I feel like my instinct is just to say, we're too close to that noisy table over there.
Which is blunt, right?
Yeah.
It's a direct complaint.
Yep.
What's fascinating here is how advanced speakers use indirectness to wield power. They completely avoid blunt complaints.
So what do they say instead?
They'll say something like, "I wonder if there's a table with a little more separation. We'd hate to impose on our neighbor's conversation."
Oh, that is sneaky. I love that. So you're basically framing your own desire for privacy as this selfless, polite concern for the other diner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's brilliant because by framing it that way, it becomes almost impossible for the host to refuse. If they say no, they're basically saying they don't care about their other guests' conversations.
You're trapping them in their own good manners.
You really are. Or they might say a table is too conspicuous, or that the acoustics are too loud to converse easily.
Blaming the acoustics. That's so good. You're not blaming the restaurant, you're blaming physics.
Exactly. And another great tactic right at the arrival is the special occasion drop.
Oh, right. Like casually mentioning it's your anniversary.
Yeah. Dropping the fact that it's an anniversary or a birthday, it isn't just making small talk. It's an implicit request.
For better service or like a free dessert.
For both, honestly. Right. It's signaling to the staff that this is a high-stakes meal and they need to bring their A game. It's a strategic move wrapped in casual conversation.
Okay, so we've socially engineered our way into the best booth in the house. We've secured the physical environment. Now the focus shifts to the two things that will dictate the rest of the meal: the server and the menu.
The two biggest hurdles.
Right. And with the server, it seems like we need to build rapport. We have to move past that basic, "I'd like water" transaction.
You have to. If you want the masterclass experience, you transform the transaction into a relationship. You use the waiter's name. You show genuine appreciation.
And you ask about the off-menu specials, right?
Yes, that's crucial. Asking about specials before you even open the menu shows that you trust their expertise. You're making them a collaborator in your dining experience.
Which you're going to need, because once you actually open that menu, it is a whole different language.
The modern menu is a fascinating piece of literature.
Literature is a generous word for it. It's basically a marketing document, isn't it? Full of all this culinary jargon designed to completely justify a $40 chicken breast.
Well, yes, it justifies a price point, but it does it by telling a story. Think about the ingredient adjectives we see everywhere now.
Like artisanal.
Right. Artisanal.
Okay.
It means handcrafted, not mass-produced. Or heritage.
Heritage tomatoes. I see that everywhere.
Exactly. Heritage implies old traditional lineages. It's not just a tomato, it's a piece of agricultural history. And then there's provenance, which is all about origin, like Lake District pork.
It tells you exactly where it grew up. And my personal favorite, foraged.
Foraged is a powerful word.
It really is. It evokes this incredibly romantic image, right? Like, you picture this dedicated chef out in the misty woods at dawn, gathering wild mushrooms in a woven basket just for your dinner.
It creates a very specific aesthetic.
But I have to push back on this a little bit. Are we just paying for marketing fluff here? I mean, does an artisanal foraged mushroom actually taste chemically better, or are we literally just eating a story?
I get that criticism, I really do. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the story itself is the value. These words serve as an antidote to the modern, highly industrialized food system.
Okay, so it's like a psychological comfort.
Precisely. The words signal the restaurant's entire philosophy to the diner. It's about sustainability, care, and authenticity. You're paying for the assurance that your food was treated with respect.
That makes sense. And it's not just the ingredients, it's the preparation jargon too, the cooking methods.
Oh, the verbs are just as important as the adjectives.
Like sous vide, which just means cooked slowly in a plastic bag under a vacuum.
Right, but sous vide sounds scientific and precise. Or deconstructed.
I always laugh a little at deconstructed dishes. It's like, you took apart my pie and now I have to put it back together.
But that signals an intellectual approach to the food. The chef is asking you to think about the components. Then you have things like pan-seared or blanched, which means briefly boiled and then cooled so it keeps its crispness.
Instead of just saying boiled, which sounds like cafeteria food.
Exactly. Or cured, which means preserved with salt or sugar, not heat. It all adds to the illusion of this elite culinary laboratory.
Okay, so we've decoded the menu, we understand the literature, but now, how do you actually use this language to get exactly what you want without sounding like a demanding, difficult customer?
The art of the advanced order. This is where the real skill comes in. It starts with polite interrogation.
Polite interrogation. I like the sound of that.
Instead of just blindly ordering or pointing at the menu, you engage. You say, I was intrigued by the market fish. Could you tell me a little more about it?
Intrigued by? That is so much better than what is this?
It shows you're engaged. And when it comes to making modifications, this is where you need to use heavy softeners.
Because chefs notoriously hate modifications.
They despise them. It messes up the rhythm of the kitchen. So if you have a special request, you don't just demand it. You ask, would it be an imposition to substitute the fries?
Would it be an imposition? That is so polite, and the sources mention this classically British phrase that I love. Would it be terribly difficult to have the sauce on the side?
Terribly difficult.
No.
It's so wonderfully dramatic, but it works. It acknowledges that you're asking for a favor.
Right, you're bowing to their expertise. Now, what about allergies versus just, like, personal preferences? Because that's a delicate line.
It's very delicate. If you have a real allergy, you have to be direct. I have a serious nut allergy. Safety first, always.
Obviously. No softeners there.
But if it's just a preference, like you don't like spicy food, you frame it as a question of personal suitability.
So not, is this too spicy?
Right, because saying too spicy is an insult to the chef. It implies they messed up the balance. Instead, you say, I'm not very good with a lot of heat. Do you think the curry would be too spicy for me?
For me, you're putting the flaw in yourself, not the food. That is brilliant.
Okay.
It's okay. So the food arrives, you take a bite, and it's amazing. How do we praise it? Because just saying it's delicious feels a bit basic now.
Delicious is a beginner word. You need to elevate the praise. You move past delicious to words like exquisite, sublime, or even a triumph.
A triumph. I'm definitely using that next time I eat a good taco.
You should. And you get specific about the flavors. Describe them as piquant, which means sharp or zesty, or robust, meaning deep and complex, or subtle.
What about textures? I feel like texture is huge in fine dining.
Absolutely. You call a sauce velvety or unctuous.
Unctuous. That's a funny word. It means like rich and oily and luxurious, right?
Exactly. It shows you appreciate the fat content as a deliberate choice. Or you can describe a very light pastry as ethereal, like it's melting in your mouth.
Okay, but what if the food is bad? What if they actually mess up? Complaining in a fancy restaurant gives me so much anxiety.
It is the ultimate linguistic test.
It really feels like acting as a diplomat in a hostage negotiation. You have to get exactly what you want, a new state, but you have to make the server feel like they're collaborating with you to solve the shared mystery rather than feeling attacked.
That's a perfect analogy. You never use objective declarative statements.
Yeah.
You use subjective tentative language. You don't say, this steak is tough.
Because that's a direct insult.
Right. You say, I'm so sorry to be a bother, but I'm finding my steak to be a little on the tough side.
I'm finding, again, making it about your experience, not an objective fact.
Exactly. Or if the food is cold, you say, it seems to have gone a bit cold. Like it was a magical accident. No one is to blame.
It seems to have gone cold. That is hilarious. And if they bring the completely wrong dish?
You say, I think there may have been a slight misunderstanding.
A slight misunderstanding. You completely remove blame. You are just two people trying to figure out how this random plate of salmon ended up on the table.
It saves everyone's face. And speaking of controlling the experience, pacing is also a huge part of this.
Oh, like telling the waiter to slow down.
Yes, telling them to case the courses out. It establishes you as a thoughtful host who controls the rhythm of the entire evening.
Yeah.
You're not just being rushed through a feedlot.
You're directing a symphony. Okay, so the food is finished. We've navigated the menu, the modifications, the complaints. But the final acts of the night are honestly the most socially fraught.
Navigating the sommelier and paying the bill.
The absolute danger zones. Let's start with the wine list, because that is terrifying for most people.
It is. The vocabulary shifts entirely. You start talking about a wine's body. You ask for something robust or with soft tannins.
I always hear people say minerality.
Yes, minerality. Or a buttery texture for whites. But the most stressful part isn't the adjectives, it's the price.
Right. How do you tell the sommelier you're on a budget without, sounding cheap on a date or a business dinner?
There's a classic sommelier trick for this. You never say a number out loud.
Never say the number.
Never. You open the menu, find a wine in your exact desired price range, point to it, look the sommelier in the eye and ask, could you tell me a little about this one?
That is so smooth. So you're secretly transmitting your budget directly to their brain without saying a word.
Exactly. A good sommelier will instantly read the price and either recommend that bottle or suggest something else at that exact same price point.
Magic. And then they bring the bottle, they pour that tiny splash in your glass, and everyone stares at you. The tasting ritual.
The swirl and sip.
I always thought it was supposed to be deciding if they actually liked the wine. Like, no, this isn't my favorite, take it back.
Oh, no. That is a huge misconception. The tasting ritual is strictly a quality control check.
Wait, really?
Yes. You are only checking to see if the wine is corked.
Meaning it's contaminated.
Right. If the cork is faulty, the wine will smell musty, like wet cardboard. If it smells like normal wine, you accept it. You don't send it back just because it's not your favorite flavor.
Okay, that relieves so much pressure. Just sniff for wet cardboard. Got it. So, the wine is drank, the dessert is done, it's time for the bill.
Yes, to settle up.
Settle up, nice and casual. But then the little leather folder arrives and the real fight begins. The payment dance.
It is strict social choreography. Person A offers to pay. Let me get this.
And person B absolutely has to protest, right? Oh, no, you don't have to do that.
They must protest. Then person A insists, no, I insist my pleasure.
And then person B accepts, but they have to use the crucial rebalancing phrase.
You must let me get the next one.
Yes, you must let me get the next one. Or, I guess the alternative is just going Dutch and splitting it down the middle. But assuming one person pays, there's also the tipping to figure out.
Which requires deciphering the receipt.
Yeah.
You have to understand the difference between a tip being included versus a discretionary service charge.
Discretionary meaning optional. So what does this all mean? Why do we humans have to perform this incredibly elaborate, exhausting payment dance? Why can't we just bluntly say, hey, I'm only spending $50 tonight, I'm paying for my own food?
This raises an important question about human nature. Because fundamentally, money is an incredibly awkward, taboo subject in social settings.
It really ruins the vibe.
It does. It shatters the elegant illusion you've spent the whole night building. So these linguistic rituals, the fake protests, the insisting, the secret wine pointing, they preserve everyone's dignity. They maintain social harmony.
It's like we are protecting each other's feelings while handling the ugly business of money.
Exactly. We are handling financial matters without breaking the spell.
It's amazing. So, to summarize all of this for you, our listener mastering English, or really any language at a high level, isn't just about memorizing a dictionary.
It's never just vocabulary.
It's about using language to curate an experience. It's how we navigate these really complex social landscapes and, honestly, express a discerning personality.
Language is the tool we use to shape our reality.
Which brings me to a final, slightly provocative thought I want to leave you with to mull over. We've just spent this whole deep dive talking about how we use these brilliant, indirect linguistic tricks, the softeners, the subjective framing, the payment dance, all to manage the feelings of waitstaff and our dining companions. But if you think about it, how much of our everyday communication at work, or even at home with our families, is actually just a menu of carefully curated, indirect requests disguised as simple conversation?
Oh, that is a deep rabbit hole to go down.
Right. Like, we do this all the time without even realizing it. We're always doing the dance.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Next time you walk into a nice restaurant, you'll know exactly what's really being said. Happy dining, everyone. You know that feeling. You're sitting in a really nice restaurant.
Oh, yeah. Everyone knows that feeling.
Right. Like the kind with those heavy linen napkins that feel almost like a weighted blanket across your lap.
The ones that make you feel instantly underdressed.
Exactly. And there's that ambient lighting that makes, everyone look like they belong in some cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah, the lighting is always perfectly curated.
And then you've got those silent, stealthy waiters who just somehow ensure your water glass never drops below the halfway mark.
They're like ninjas, honestly.
But despite all that luxury, despite the beautiful setting, you're sitting there feeling just, a little bit out of your depth.
Right. There's that slight underlying tension.
Yeah, like a subtle panic sets in when the waiter actually approaches. And you suddenly realize you're relying entirely on like the most basic, strictly transactional phrases just to get through the interaction.
The survival phrases.
Exactly. You just blurt out, "I want the chicken." Or at the end of the night, you hold up that universal hand signal and go, "The bill, please."
Right. And let's be fair. I mean, that gets the job done.
It does.
It's entirely functional communication. You're conveying a need and, the restaurant is fulfilling it.
It is functional. Absolutely. I mean, you get your chicken, you pay your bill, and you leave.
Yeah.
But then you look over at another table across the dining room, and the people sitting over there aren't just ordering food.
No, they're having a totally different experience.
These seem to be conducting a symphony. They're charming the waiter. They're, getting extra perks without ever actually demanding them.
Well, the perks are the best part.
And they manage to navigate like a disastrously tough steak or a wildly confusing wine list with such effortless grace that the staff actually seems grateful for the interaction.
It's like watching magic.
It really is. You watch them, you realize, wait, they're playing a completely different game than I am.
And they absolutely are playing a different game. But, the secret to that game isn't that they're necessarily wealthier or VIPs or industry insiders.
Right.
The secret is actually their underlying linguistic strategy. They're operating at what linguists call a C1 or C2 proficiency level.
Okay, let's unpack this right away because for those who aren't language nerds, we really need to clarify what those levels mean.
Sure, yeah.
So think of the A2 level as your basic survival toolkit. You have a hammer and a screwdriver.
Right, very basic tools.
You can successfully communicate, "I am hungry, bring me food."
Exactly.
But the C2 level, the absolute peak of language mastery, that's the masterclass level.
It really is.
It's the linguistic equivalent of being able to negotiate, a delicate international peace treaty. Or in this case, a Michelin-star tasting menu without ruffling a single feather.
That is a perfect analogy. The survival toolkit versus the diplomatic masterclass. Because reaching that masterclass level, it's not just about, memorizing a larger vocabulary or just dropping bigger words into the conversation.
It's not just swallowing a thesaurus.
No, not at all. It's about deeply understanding the unspoken rules of the room. It's about using language to build immediate, authentic rapport.
Which is so hard to do.
It is. Essentially, you're using subtle phrasing to co-create an experience where you are in total control of the environment, yet you never once sound demanding or arrogant or entitled.
So what we're doing today is exploring this fascinating linguistic gap.
Yeah, we're diving deep into it.
We're going to map out the journey from the basic I want and give me to the masterful, highly strategic social performance of a proficient speaker.
And it really is a performance.
It is. And what's wild is that this performance doesn't just begin when you sit down at the table. The timeline of this interaction starts long before anyone even sets foot in the building.
It absolutely begins the moment you pick up the phone or, open an email to make the reservation. This is where we see the very first major divergence between basic survival communication and masterful interaction.
Okay, so paint that picture for me.
Well, a basic speaker, someone just utilizing their toolkit, they'll call up a restaurant and just state, I want to book a table.
Which, grammatically, it's correct.
It's totally correct. It is a statement of desire and a statement of fact.
But it's also incredibly blunt. It's like a wall. When I read through our sources for this deep dive, I realized how much a proficient speaker elevates this interaction by fundamentally changing the structure of the request itself.
Oh, completely.
They completely abandon the bluntness of, I want.
They have to, because I want is a demand, and demands instantly create a sort of a microscopic level of friction.
Yeah, nobody likes being demanded to do something.
Exactly. So a highly proficient speaker will instead open with a phrase like, I was hoping to book a table for 2 for this Friday evening, perhaps around 8 o'clock.
Let's look at the psychology of that shift.
Please do.
I was hoping to. It's just a wonderfully soft, polite opener.
It really softens the blow.
It completely removes the demand. It frames your request as a gentle aspiration rather than a royal decree.
Yes. And adding the phrase, perhaps around 8 o'clock, is doing a lot of heavy lifting too.
How so?
Well, it demonstrates flexibility. It's an invitation to a dialogue. You're signaling to the person on the other end of the phone that you understand they're running a complex, very busy establishment.
Right, you're respecting their time.
Exactly, and you're willing to negotiate the terms of your arrival. You aren't imposing your will, you're opening a collaborative discussion.
That's brilliant. But the strategy doesn't stop at just securing a time and date, right?
No, not at all.
Because you don't just passively accept whatever random table they decide to assign you.
Exactly. You have to actively shape your future experience right then and there. A proficient speaker makes very nuanced requests, and they do it by deploying very specific, almost literary terminology.
Like what?
Well, if they want privacy, they won't just ask to be put in a corner.
It sounds kind of sad, honestly. Put me in the corner.
Right. Instead, they'll ask if the restaurant has a quiet nook, or perhaps a booth.
Oh, I love the phrase quiet nook. It paints such a vivid, cozy picture.
It really does.
It tells the person managing the reservations that you are a discerning diner. You actually appreciate the architecture and the atmosphere of their space.
Exactly. You aren't just a physical body needing a chair to consume calories. You're there to curate a specific ambiance.
And there's this highly strategic move we need to discuss regarding special occasions.
Oh, the anniversary trick.
Yes. Let's say it's your 10-year anniversary. The survival toolkit approach is to just blurt out, it's our anniversary, do we get a free dessert?
Which you should never, ever do.
It's entirely too direct. It strips the interaction of all its grace.
It really does. So the masterful approach is to casually drop the information as if you're simply helping them maintain their administrative records.
Like it's just a clerical detail.
Right. You say, I should mention it's a special occasion for us. We're celebrating an anniversary. That statement is just a masterclass in indirect communication.
It's the reciprocity principle in action.
Absolutely.
By just offering the information without a demand attached to it, you implicitly suggest you would appreciate a better table.
You're planting a seed.
You're hinting that you expect attentive service.
Mm-hmm.
And you leave the door wide open for the restaurant to organically offer a complimentary glass of champagne or, a candle in your dessert.
Exactly. You've planted a highly effective seed, but you haven't explicitly asked for a single thing.
And restaurants actually love this, don't they?
They really do, because it allows them to be the generous host. It allows them to feel like they are surprising and delighting you rather than just fulfilling a contractual demand for free cake.
So the seed is planted, Friday night rolls around, and you arrive at the restaurant.
The big night.
The A2 speaker walks up to the host stand and just says, a table for 2, please?
Mm-hmm.
But the C1 or C2 speaker explicitly links back to that carefully crafted booking.
Right, they close the loop.
They walk in and say, good evening. We have a reservation for 2 at 8 o'clock under the name Vance. You immediately establish yourself as organized and serious.
Yes. But here's the real crucible. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Uh-oh. What happens?
What happens when the host smiles, walks you through the beautiful dining room, and tries to seat you at a genuinely terrible table?
Oh, the worst. Like it's right next to the swinging kitchen doors.
Or it's stranded in the middle of a high-traffic walkway where waiters are just going to bump your chair all night?
This is the exact moment where your social strategy is really tested.
Absolutely.
A blunt speaker reacts with immediate friction. They say, I don't like this table, or this is too close to the kitchen.
And from a psychological standpoint, this puts the host immediately on the defensive.
Right, because you just criticized their spatial management.
Exactly. The proficient speaker, however, avoids criticism entirely. They use elevated vocabulary and a technique called understatement to explain why they want to move.
Framing the request in a way that is structurally impossible to refuse.
Precisely.
Right, so instead of complaining about the foot traffic, you look at the table, look at the host, and say, this is lovely, but I think we'd prefer a table that's a little less conspicuous.
Yes.
I've always found the word conspicuous fascinating here.
Well, conspicuous means easily seen or attracting attention. By asking for something less conspicuous, you're politely asking for privacy, but without sounding like you're hiding from the law.
Right, right.
And more importantly, without complaining about the specific physical flaws of the spot they chose, you make it about your internal preference, not their bad table.
Let's look at another scenario. What if the restaurant is just incredibly loud?
Oh, that happens all the time now.
We've all been to those modern places with high exposed ceilings, polished concrete floors, and just terrible sound dampening.
Where everyone is shouting just to be heard.
Exactly. The blunt approach is it's too loud in here. But the masterful approach is to say the ambience is fantastic, but would you happen to have a table where the acoustics are a little softer? It might be easier for us to converse.
Notice the structural sandwiching happening there.
Right. The compliment first.
Yes, you begin with a compliment to disarm them. The ambiance is fantastic. Then you frame your request not as a critique of their interior design choices, but as a practical, highly relatable human need.
The need to actually talk to your dining companion.
Exactly.
You know, I used to think of this kind of maneuvering as a game of social chess, but honestly, that's a bit cliche.
Yeah, it's a bit tired.
It's actually more like linguistic judo. You aren't meeting their force with direct force. You're using their own momentum, their desire as hospitality professionals, to provide a good experience to achieve your goal.
That's a great way to put it.
But I have to ask you, and I really want to push back on this a bit.
Go for it.
Does being this soft, this indirect, run the risk of sounding passive-aggressive? Like, how do you say less conspicuous without sounding like you're patronizing the host?
That is a crucial distinction, and the difference lies entirely in your nonverbal delivery.
Like your tone?
Your tone of voice, your eye contact, your body language. If you say less conspicuous with a sigh and an eye roll, then yes, it is deeply passive-aggressive.
This table is so conspicuous.
Exactly. But if you say it with a warm, collaborative smile, maintaining gentle eye contact, it becomes an invitation to solve a puzzle together.
Oh, I like that.
You're presenting a preference, not a judgment. When you use this almost Machiavellian politeness correctly, you invite the other person to be the hero who solves your entirely reasonable problem.
That makes sense. It's the velvet glove. Let's look at one more seating scenario, which is just my absolute nightmare.
What's that?
Being seated mere inches away from another couple.
Oh, the dreaded two-top right next to another two-top.
Yes, you can literally hear them chewing.
And it's the worst.
The proficient speaker handles this by saying, I wonder if there's a table with a little more separation. We'd hate to impose on our neighbor's conversation.
That right there is the linguistic judo at its finest.
It is brilliantly effective. You're framing your own desperate desire to escape these strangers as a deep, selfless concern for their privacy.
We'd hate to impose.
Right. The host cannot possibly say no to that framing. To refuse you would mean forcing you to be rude to the other guests. It is a velvet trap.
A perfect velvet trap.
So you've gracefully negotiated a better table. You sit down, and the waiter approaches for the initial interaction.
The first contact.
The waiter says, Good evening, my name is Daniel, and I'll be looking after you. Can I start you off with some water for the table? Still or sparkling? Transactionally, the basic response is just, still please. But how does our masterclass speaker handle Daniel?
They use this brief, routine moment to build a massive bridge.
Okay, how?
They reply, Daniel, thank you very much. That would be lovely. We'll have a bottle of sparkling for the table, please.
Oh, using the name.
Yes. Using the waiter's name immediately is a critical pivot point for the entire evening. It transforms the dynamic from a robotic, functional transaction into a personal, respectful human interaction.
It proves you were actually listening to him when he introduced himself.
Exactly.
You recognize him as a person, not just a vending machine that dispenses sparkling water.
Exactly. This tiny detail drastically alters the quality of service you will receive. And you don't stop there. You follow up with a strategic inquiry before he even walks away.
What kind of inquiry?
You say, Daniel, lovely to meet you. Before we look at the wine, could you tell us if there are any specials this evening that aren't on the menu?
Oh, I love this move because you're immediately handing Daniel the microphone.
You are.
You're giving him the floor to share his insider knowledge. Hospitality staff generally take a lot of pride in what they do, and you're validating his expertise right out of the gate.
It sets the tone perfectly.
So within the first 3 minutes of walking through the door, you've secured the best possible table without causing offense. You've established genuine personal rapport with the person controlling your food, and you've gathered inside intelligence on the menu.
You are in complete and visible control of the environment.
Which brings us to the next challenge. The moment Daniel hands you the menu itself.
The menu.
Now, the Survival Toolkit user looks at a menu and sees a utilitarian list of foods with corresponding prices.
Just a list of ingredients.
Right. But at the C1 or C2 level, a modern high-end menu is not just a list. It is a highly engineered, carefully crafted marketing document.
It really is.
It is a piece of literature that demands to be actively deciphered.
What's fascinating here is how the language on modern menus has evolved to evoke very specific emotional responses.
Tell me more about that.
Well, historically, if you go back to aristocratic dining centuries ago, the goal of a menu was to disguise the origin of the food.
Wait, really? Disguise it?
Yes. Wealthy people wanted highly refined, sculptured dishes that looked nothing like the animals or vegetables they came from. The further the food was from the dirt of the farm, the higher the status.
Well, so the more artificial, the better.
Exactly. But today, the exact opposite is true. The language is deliberately designed to hyper-localize the food, to tell a gritty, authentic story about exactly where it came from and the philosophy of the people who grew it.
It really is like literary analysis. We have to crack the code of these adjectives.
We do.
Let's look at the words that describe the ingredients themselves. These are the words that signal quality and authenticity. And I feel like the absolute king of these adjectives right now is artisanal.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't just buy a loaf of bread at a nice restaurant anymore. You're served artisanal bread. What is that word actually doing to our brains when we read it?
Artisanal is a massive psychological trigger. When you see that word, it creates an immediate, stark narrative contrast against anything mass-produced or factory-made.
So it's anti-factory.
Right. When a proficient speaker reads artisanal bread, they don't just process the concept of good bread. The word forces their brain to picture a skilled, flour-dusted craftsman waking up before dawn, kneading the dough by hand, perhaps using a sourdough starter that has been kept alive for 3 generations.
Oh, wow. So the actual physical taste of the bread on your tongue is almost secondary to the emotional comfort that the word artisanal provides.
Yes.
You're paying for the story of the baker. And we see this everywhere. What about heritage or heirloom? You never just see tomatoes anymore. They're always heritage tomatoes or heirloom carrots.
Those words specifically suggest lineage and survival.
Lineage, like royal carrots.
Kind of. They imply that the seed variety is old, traditional, and most importantly has not been genetically modified for supermarket shelf life or perfectly round shapes.
So the imperfections are the point.
Exactly. It promises a deeper, more rugged, more authentic flavor profile that connects you directly to the past. It speaks to a modern yearning for simpler, pre-industrial times.
That makes so much sense. And this ties directly into another critical menu word, provenance.
Yes, provenance.
Now, provenance literally just means the origin or the source of something. It's a term you usually hear in the art world when authenticating a painting. But on a menu, it operates differently.
It does. When you see Lake District pork or a menu that boasts about the provenance of its beef, it's a massive flashing signal of quality control.
It's reassuring.
Right. It tells the diner that the restaurant cares enough to track its ingredients back to a specific named farm. It guarantees freshness and ethical sourcing. This concept of provenance is the absolute bedrock of the farm-to-table narrative.
Right, because the farm-to-table label positions the restaurant as highly trustworthy and morally ethical. You aren't just eating a dinner, you're participating in a sustainable, righteous ecosystem.
You're doing a good deed by eating dinner.
Exactly. But if we really want to get into the pure romance of menu literature, we have to talk about the word foraged. Wild mushrooms foraged from the local forest.
Oh, that's the ultimate romantic buzzword. To forage means to wander and search for wild food.
Right.
When a chef puts that word on a menu, they are painting an incredibly specific, deeply romantic picture of themselves.
Like they're a woodsman.
Exactly. The narrative is that they aren't just in the back alley opening cardboard boxes from a massive corporate delivery truck. They're out in the misty morning woods wearing boots, carefully selecting nature's hidden treasures from the forest floor.
It suggests extreme rarity, right? Like you can't just buy this at the store.
Rarity, seasonality, and a profound, almost spiritual connection to the natural world. It is the ultimate antidote to industrialization.
Okay, so we've got the adjectives that build the origin story of the ingredients. But what about the words that describe the preparation, the philosophy of the cooking itself?
Ah, yes.
Because this is where menus can get incredibly abstract. Let's look at a very controversial word, deconstructed. I've always found this word a bit pretentious, to be honest.
A lot of people do.
If I order an apple crumble, I want a warm, cohesive apple crumble. I don't want a DIY kit on a plate. What is the psychological goal of a chef presenting food this way?
It's an excellent question, and it speaks to how high-end dining mimics modern art.
Okay, how so?
If you order a deconstructed apple crumble, the chef has literally taken the structural concept of the dessert apart. You'll receive the components served separately on a large plate.
So it's spread out everywhere.
Right. A perfect dollop of cooked apple here, a deliberate smear of cinnamon sauce there, a distinct geometric pile of crumble mixture, and a perfectly shaped quenelle of ice cream right in the center.
So it sounds so clinical, so analytical.
It is highly analytical. It signals an intellectual, experimental approach to food.
Yeah.
The chef is actively playing with culinary tradition.
They're challenging you.
Exactly. They are asking you, the diner, to be an intellectual participant in the meal, not just a passive consumer. They want you to experience the individual textures and flavors in pure isolation before you decide how to combine them in your own mouth.
Wow. So as a proficient speaker, you recognize the word deconstructed as a major signpost.
A huge signpost. It tells you immediately that this is not a rustic, comforting, traditional kitchen. This is a highly modern, avant-garde, challenging establishment.
Another signpost of that clinical modernity is sous vide.
Yes, very popular right now.
It's a French term that translates to under vacuum. They seal the meat or the fish in a plastic bag and cook it incredibly slowly in a precisely temperature-controlled water bath. It makes the meat wildly tender.
Yes, perfectly tender every time.
But why use the jargon? Why put the term sous vide on the menu instead of just writing incredibly tender chicken?
Because sous vide signals absolute scientific precision. It provides a stark contrast to the romantic, earthy vibe of foraged.
It's the opposite end of the spectrum.
Exactly. It tells the diner that this kitchen operates with the accuracy of a laboratory. It elevates the preparation from mere domestic cooking to a highly controlled, professional discipline that you could never easily replicate in your own home.
So we have the adjectives for the romantic story, the abstract terms for the intellectual philosophy. Finally, we have the verbs, the action words.
The verbs are essential.
Modern menus almost never just say a food was cooked. They use verbs designed to make your mouth water before you've even made a decision.
The verbs are highly evocative. You don't order a cooked steak, you order a pan-seared steak.
Pan-seared. You can practically hear the sizzle when you read it.
You really can.
It creates a specific, visceral image of incredibly high heat, a delicious caramelized brown crust forming on the outside of the meat while the inside remains perfectly juicy.
Precisely. Or consider how they describe vegetables. They are rarely just boiled, they're blanched.
Blanched.
Blanching means they were plunged into vigorously boiling water for just a fleeting moment and then immediately shocked in a bowl of ice-cold water.
So they don't turn into mush.
Right. The word blanched acts as a promise to the diner. It promises that the vegetables will arrive crisp, brightly colored, and tasting of fresh greenery rather than being a mushy, overcooked mess.
Or take fish that is described as cured, like cured salmon.
A completely different process.
Right. Curing means the fish wasn't cooked with heat at all. It was preserved over time with a delicate mixture of salt and sugar, fundamentally altering the protein structure, changing the texture entirely, making it delicate, translucent, and unique.
It's a beautiful word.
So, taking all this in, returning to my literary analogy, Are we actually paying for the physical food on the plate, or are we paying for the story these words are telling us?
We are paying for the flawless synthesis of both.
Both.
The food must be structurally excellent, of course, but the words are what prime our palate, elevate our expectations, and ultimately justify the massive premium we are paying for the experience.
The words create anticipation.
They build a world.
Right.
And in fine dining, anticipation is half of the flavor.
Okay, so we've cracked the code, we've deciphered the menu, we understand the jargon, and we have built a beautiful mental picture of the food.
The groundwork is laid.
But as our deep dive sources make very clear, possessing that knowledge is only half the battle. Acting on that knowledge requires its own incredibly delicate set of linguistic skills.
Yes. The actual ordering process.
And the overarching theme here is moving away from just stating a flat choice, I'll have the fish, to initiating what linguists call a polite interrogation.
A polite interrogation is essential. As a C1 or C2 speaker, your goal is to ensure the dish matches your exact, highly refined expectations, and you want to extract that information while making the server feel respected and valued.
How does a lower-level speaker handle it?
Well, someone relying on the toolkit often hesitates to ask questions. They fear they'll look ignorant or they worry about being an annoying customer.
I think we've all felt that fear.
Definitely. But the proficient speaker knows that intelligent, targeted questions actually signal respect. It shows you take their food seriously.
Let's play this out. You're looking at the market fish of the day. The menu description is intentionally vague because it changes daily. You don't just order it and cross your fingers, hoping for the best.
No, absolutely not.
You look at Daniel, our waiter, who we've already built rapport with, and you say, I was intrigued by the market fish. Could you tell me a little more about it?
Let's break down why that works so well.
Please do.
I was intrigued by is a tremendously powerful opener. It flatters the restaurant. It says, your menu has successfully captured my intellect and curiosity.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
It really will. And following it with, could you tell me a little more about it, is a wonderfully soft, open-ended invitation.
It lets Daniel do his thing.
Daniel can now shine. He gets to tell you it's a pan-seared sea bass caught off the coast of Cornwall, served on a bed of foraged samphire with a piquant lemon butter sauce.
Wow, you've co-created a vivid picture of the meal together.
Yes, it's a collaboration now.
And if you want to show you have a truly sophisticated palate, you drill down even further. You listen to his description and you follow up with, that sounds exquisite. Is the sauce very rich?
Notice what's happening there.
You aren't just asking a binary question like, is the food good?
Right, you're asking about a highly specific culinary characteristic.
But here is where the tension in the dining room really ratchets up.
Oh, the modifications.
Making special requests. Modifying the chef's vision. This is often viewed as the cardinal sin of dining out, if done incorrectly. Nobody wants to be labeled as the difficult, high-maintenance customer.
It is a terrifying linguistic tightrope walk for many people.
Yeah.
You have to achieve your desired modification, getting the food exactly how you want it without ever sounding like you're issuing a dictatorial demand to the kitchen.
Let's say you want to swap the heavy duck fat French fries for a simple side salad. The blunt survival toolkit approach is, I want salad, not fries.
Which is so abrupt, it disrupts their system. The kitchen staff will instantly resent you.
But the proficient speaker navigates this by deploying incredibly heavy softeners. They frame the modification as a gentle question of possibility, proactively acknowledging the logistical burden they might be causing.
Exactly.
They say, I was wondering, would it be an imposition to substitute the fries for a side salad?
Let's look closely at that word, imposition.
The strong word.
It is. An imposition is defined as an unfair or unreasonable demand or burden. By proactively using that exact word, you're verbally acknowledging to the waiter that you understand. You're asking them to do extra unscripted work.
You're showing empathy.
You're showing deep respect for the kitchen's established systems and flow. You're basically saying, I know this is a hassle, and if it's too much trouble for the chef, I completely understand.
And ironically, projecting this level of humility makes it almost socially impossible for them to say no.
Exactly.
It really is like performing a linguistic magic trick. You make them want to bend the rules for you because you've been so incredibly polite and deferential about asking.
It's incredibly effective.
No, there is another phrase used for this that I want to push back on a bit.
Okay.
The sources highlight the phrase, would it be terribly difficult to have the sauce on the side? I have to ask about that word, terribly. If I am sitting in a casual, fast-paced diner in New York City, and I ask a stressed-out waitress, would it be terribly difficult to put my ketchup in a ramekin? I'm going to sound absolutely ridiculous. I might even sound like I'm mocking her.
Yeah.
How does the context of the restaurant dictate which of these C2 strategies we actually deploy?
That is a fantastic point, and it highlights the true nature of fluency.
Okay.
Fluency isn't just knowing the fancy words, it's knowing how to read the room and match the register of your environment. You're absolutely right. In a bustling New York diner, using a heavy British English adverb like terribly or awfully to modify a request is a severe mismatch of register.
It sounds pompous.
It does.
Yeah.
In that diner setting, your C2 strategy shifts to brevity and warmth. Hey, any chance I could grab that sauce on the side? Thanks so much.
Right. You adapt to the culture of the room.
Exactly. But in a hushed, Michelin-starred dining room in London or Paris, where the service is highly formal and structured, would it be terribly difficult, is the perfect key for the lock. Yes. By magnifying the perceived effort of your tiny request to an almost absurd degree, because obviously it isn't terribly difficult to put sauce in a separate little bowl, you are adopting a posture of extreme deference to the chef's original vision. You're smoothing over the insult of altering their art.
That makes total sense. You calibrate the politeness to the prestige of the room.
Exactly.
Now, there's a massive difference between a preference, like wanting your sauce on the side because you're watching calories, and a medical necessity, like a severe allergy.
A world of difference.
How do you navigate a life-threatening allergy without sounding like a dramatic diva, but while ensuring you don't end up leaving the restaurant in the back of an ambulance?
With a genuine medical allergy, your strategy shifts entirely. You drop the heavy softeners because clarity is a matter of safety.
Right. You can't be ambiguous here.
You must be direct, but you maintain your utmost professionalism. You look the waiter in the eye and say, I should mention that I have a serious nut allergy. Could you please advise me on which dishes are completely nut-free?
I should mention that. It's formal, it's crystal clear, and it leaves no room for misinterpretation.
And using the phrase, could you please advise me, once again empowers the waiter. They aren't just taking an order, they're acting as your culinary guide and protector.
But what if it is just a preference? What if you just really, truly hate spicy food? You can't ethically claim an allergy to jalapenos if it isn't true, just to make sure they leave them out.
Exactly, and you shouldn't lie about allergies. That compromises the kitchen's safety protocols for people who actually need them.
Right.
But you also shouldn't criticize the dish by saying, your curry is too spicy. The brilliant linguistic strategy here is to frame your personal preference as a collaborative inquiry about your own biological suitability for the meal.
How does that sound?
You say, the Thai green curry sounds wonderful, but I'm not very good with a lot of heat. Do you think it would be too spicy for me?
You take the blame entirely onto yourself. I'm not very good with heat. You aren't saying the chef makes a bad, overly spicy curry. You're confessing that your own personal tolerance is sadly lacking.
It completely transforms a potential complaint or demand into a friendly consultation.
The waiter can honestly assess the situation and say, it does have quite a kick, sir. Let me ask the chef to make a milder version for you. It is a totally frictionless modification.
And this mastery, this control over the experience, extends to the very pacing of the evening itself.
Oh, pacing is so important.
In many modern restaurants, the business model relies on turning tables quickly. They want you in and out. Your main course might miraculously arrive while you're still chewing your last bite of appetizer.
Which is so stressful.
A proficient speaker preempts this rushed feeling entirely. They manage the timeline during the ordering phase. They tell the waiter, we're in no rush this evening, so please do feel free to pace the courses out for us.
Please do feel free to pace the courses out for us. It's a direct instruction disguised brilliantly as a polite, generous suggestion.
You're granting them permission.
You're telling them to slow down, but you're phrasing it as if you're giving them the freedom to relax. You are taking complete control of the temporal rhythm of the night. You truly are the conductor.
You are.
So the complex order is perfectly placed, the pacing is set to your liking, and finally, the food arrives at the table. You take your first bite.
The moment of truth.
And we enter the next phase, the lexicon of taste. Because when the food is genuinely good, an A2 learner really only has one word in their survival toolkit to express it. Delicious.
Or maybe yummy.
Right. But a proficient speaker, they possess an entire lexicon that makes them sound like a seasoned culinary critic.
The vocabulary of culinary appreciation at the highest level is incredibly rich and highly specific.
Give me some examples.
Well, a C1 or C2 speaker doesn't just broadly state that something is good, they categorize the exact type of goodness they're experiencing. If a dish is visually stunning, highly refined, and shows delicate, intricate craftsmanship, they don't call it delicious.
What do you call it?
They call it exquisite.
My compliments to the chef. The sea base was absolutely exquisite. It sounds so much more elevated, so much more thoughtful than the sea base was really yummy.
It shows you actually thought about it.
And what if the dish transcends just being a very good meal and becomes almost a spiritual, unforgettable experience? Our sources suggest deploying the word sublime.
Sublime is a heavy hitter in the English language.
It really is.
It means something is of such unparalleled excellence, grandeur, or beauty as to inspire intense admiration or a sense of awe. You must use this word sparingly, or it loses its power.
Right. If everything is sublime, nothing is.
Exactly. But when warranted, you say, that dark chocolate dessert wasn't just good, it was truly sublime.
And if you want to be slightly more theatrical, perhaps to show deep appreciation for the kitchen's conceptual effort, you call a highly complex dish a triumph.
Yes.
The combination of the sweet scallop with the sour rhubarb is an absolute triumph. It frames the dish not just as food, but as a hard-won victory for the chef.
A triumph. I love that. It turns dinner into an epic narrative.
It does. But it's not just about offering overall praise. It's about proving you're paying attention by describing specific flavor profiles.
Right.
If you taste a vibrant lemon sauce, you don't just say it's lemony, you say it's piquant.
Piquant is the perfect word for a flavor that is pleasantly sharp, tangy, and intellectually stimulating to the palate. It's a flavor that cuts through heavy richness.
Or you might say a citrus dish is zesty,
which refers to the fragrant, volatile oils found in citrus peel, suggesting a bright, energetic, lively flavor.
Conversely, if you're eating a heavy winter beef stew that has been slowly braising in red wine for 10 hours, you would never call it zesty or piquant.
No, definitely not.
You would call it robust. It's strong, full-bodied, and incredibly complex. And if a flavor is barely there, just a fleeting whisper, like a tiny, almost imperceptible hint of truffle oil folded into a massive bowl of risotto, it is subtle.
Praising a subtle flavor is a massive flex. It proves to the waiter that you have a highly refined palate that can detect the chef's most delicate nuances.
But what about texture? Because texture is arguably half the physiological experience of eating.
Texture is crucial, and the vocabulary here is beautifully descriptive. For a flawlessly smooth, rich, creamy dessert, you use the word velvety.
Like the fabric.
It directly likens the tactile experience of the food to the luxurious, soft fabric. But my absolute favorite culinary word, a true benchmark of C2 vocabulary, is unctuous.
Unctuous. It is such a strange, almost slightly gross-sounding word when you first hear it.
It does have an unusual phonetic quality, but its meaning in fine dining is incredibly precise and highly sought after.
What does it mean?
It describes a texture that is deeply rich, oily, and luxurious in a profoundly positive way. You might say the bone marrow sauce reduction was incredibly rich and unctuous. It coated the pasta perfectly.
It implies a deep, satisfying, almost primal indulgence.
Exactly. And on the complete opposite end of the textural spectrum, if a chef has utilized molecular gastronomy to create a delicate foam that literally vanishes the moment it touches your tongue, you call it ethereal.
Ethereal. Light, airy, almost lacking physical substance, as if from another world entirely.
Ethereal foam and unctuous bone marrow. We are light years away from the delicious chicken we started with.
We really are.
Yep.
But here is the most stressful part of the entire evening.
Oh, no.
What happens when the food is bad?
The dreaded moment.
What happens when you cut into that pan-seared steak and it's like chewing on a leather shoe? Or the soup arrives and it is freezing cold? This is the ultimate social test. The polite complaint.
It's so hard to do well.
I used to think of this as trying to defuse a bomb where one wrong wire ruins everything, but that's not quite right. Diffusing a bomb is frantic. This is more like performing delicate surgery.
A linguistic surgery.
Yes. You have to use a linguistic scalpel to excise the problem without causing the patient, in this case the waiter and the chef, to bleed out from defensiveness.
That is a much better analogy. It's a high-stakes, precision linguistic operation.
So what's the golden rule?
The golden rule of the polite complaint is that you must never, ever be aggressive. And more importantly, you must never be entirely objective in your accusation.
Okay, never objective.
You always, always open with a heavy softener. You gently summon the waiter and begin with, "I'm so sorry to be a bother, but," or, "Excuse me, Daniel, I hate to have to mention this, but."
You are verbally expressing deep reluctance.
Yes.
You're signaling to Daniel that it causes you genuine physical and emotional pain to have to bring this up. You're entirely on his side.
And then comes the actual complaint. And the scalpel technique means you don't say, this steak is tough, because that is an objective, factual accusation.
Stating the steak is tough or the soup is cold is a brick wall. It leaves the waiter absolutely no room to maneuver or save face.
Exactly. It's a direct frontal attack on the kitchen's fundamental competence. Instead, the proficient speaker uses subjective, tentative language. They say, I'm finding my steak to be a little on the tough side.
I'm finding it to be. That phrasing is absolute genius.
It is entirely subjective.
You aren't boldly declaring that the steak is universally tough as a matter of scientific fact. You're simply stating that, personally, in your own unique, subjective experience of the universe at this very moment, you are finding it tough to chew.
And adding a little on the tough side softens the blow even further.
It removes the confrontation entirely.
You apply the exact same strategy to the temperature issue. You don't say, my soup is cold. You look at it sadly and say, I'm afraid my soup seems to have gone a bit cold.
Using the phrase seems to have gone introduces this tiny, polite fiction that it is a complete mystery how this tragedy occurred, rather than directly blaming the waiter for leaving it sitting on the kitchen pass for 20 minutes while they were chatting.
Right. It preserves their dignity.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Our deep dive sources highlight a highly specific phrase for when the food just isn't right, and you don't even know how to accurately describe the culinary flaw.
What's the phrase?
Well, maybe the flavor is bizarre, or the texture is weird. You look at the plate, you look up at Daniel, and you say, this isn't quite what I was expecting.
That phrase is a masterpiece of dining diplomacy.
It really is.
It places absolutely zero blame on the chef's skills or the waiter's service. It doesn't use the word bad or wrong. It simply states that there is a delta, a gap between your internal imagination of the dish and the physical reality currently sitting on the plate.
By phrasing it this softly, you compel the waiter to step in and ask a follow-up question.
Right. Oh, I'm so sorry. What were you expecting?
And boom, you're instantly in a collaborative problem-solving dialogue to fix the issue, rather than an adversarial argument.
Or if they bring you a completely different dish than what you ordered, you asked for the salmon and they bring you the duck. You don't point at it and say, you brought me the wrong food.
What do you say?
You say, I think there may have been a slight misunderstanding.
A slight misunderstanding. It's so unbelievably graceful.
It gives them an easy out.
So you've survived the intricate marketing of the menu, you've ordered with surgical precision, you've praised the unctuous sauces, and you've politely navigated the crisis of a tough steak. The table is cleared. You breathe a sigh of relief.
But you're not out of the woods yet.
No, because then the waiter approaches with one remaining menu. And this is the document that intimidates almost everyone. Even highly educated native speakers break into a cold sweat when they're handed this heavy leather book.
Oh, the wine list.
We are talking about the wine list and the impending interaction with the sommelier.
The wine list can be deeply intimidating. In a truly high-end restaurant, it can literally feel like you've been handed a phone directory written entirely in a foreign language.
It's overwhelming.
Navigating it and interacting with the sommelier, the restaurant's dedicated, highly trained wine expert, is a very specific, highly choreographed social performance filled with potential pitfalls.
And what I found so reassuring in our research is that the very first, most sophisticated move you can make when faced with a huge, incomprehensible wine list is simply admitting you don't know everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Panic leads to terrible, expensive choices. Admitting the limits of your knowledge is actually a massive sign of confidence.
Really?
Yes. An insecure diner pretends to know everything and orders a wine they hate just to save face. A confident C2 level diner opens the door to asking for help intelligently.
But to ask for help effectively, you cannot just look at the sommelier and say, I like red wine, bring me some.
Wow.
You need a basic functional vocabulary of preference to give them a starting point.
Let's talk about that specific vocabulary.
Good.
You look at the sommelier and you start by talking about the body of the wine. If you want something heavy, something that coats your mouth like a big Cabernet Sauvignon, you say, I'm in the mood for something full-bodied and robust.
Full-bodied and robust sends a clear signal. It communicates a desire for power, high alcohol content, and deep, rich, dark fruit flavors.
But if you're eating something lighter, or you just prefer a more delicate red, like a Pinot Noir, you shift your terminology entirely. You say, I'm looking for a red that's a little lighter on the palate, perhaps something with soft tannins.
Palate and tannins. By casually deploying those specific industry words, you immediately establish a baseline of mutual respect with the sommelier. You're speaking their native language.
And what about white wine?
Right. You don't just say, make it dry. You say, I'd love something crisp and zesty with good minerality.
Minerality is a fantastic, highly descriptive term.
It's very specific.
It describes that unique, stony, flinty, almost chalky taste, often found in certain European white wines like a Chablis.
Or, if you want the complete opposite, a heavy oak-aged Californian Chardonnay, you ask for a white with complexity and a buttery texture.
So you have the vocabulary, you engage the sommelier, you say, we're torn between a couple of options in the Burgundy section. What are your thoughts? You are actively asking for their professional expertise, turning it into a consultation rather than a transaction.
But let's say you are completely lost. You have no idea what you want. You just know you ordered the duck. You give them culinary parameters. We're hoping for a red to complement the duck.
That works perfectly too.
But here, my friend, is the trickiest, most anxiety-inducing part of the entire evening: the budget.
Oh, talking about money.
Let's paint a picture. Imagine you're on a first date. You really want to impress this person. The ambiance is perfect, but you also have to pay your rent next week.
A very real dilemma.
How do you tell a sommelier in a fancy, hushed restaurant that you absolutely cannot spend more than $50 on a bottle without actually saying the gauche words $50 out loud and ruining the romantic illusion?
The culture of high-end dining is incredibly squeamish about discussing cold, hard numbers bluntly. It shatters the illusion of effortless luxury.
So what do you do?
So over time, a universally understood nonverbal technique has developed to bypass this financial awkwardness entirely.
I love this part.
When the sommelier is standing next to you, looking down at the open wine list, you simply point your index finger directly to the printed price of a specific bottle that represents your absolute maximum budget, and you say, we were looking at something in this range. Could you tell me a little about this one?
I cannot stress enough how brilliant this is. It is exactly like passing a secret note in middle school. Why is this silent pointing gesture so universally effective?
Because it elegantly provides the sommelier with your exact financial parameters without forcing either of you to verbally acknowledge the crass transactional nature of the evening.
It's so discreet.
A good sommelier reads that physical signal instantly. They will describe the wine you physically pointed to, and then, without missing a beat, they will suggest 2 or 3 other excellent wines that fall exactly into that same unmentioned price bracket.
You've communicated your strict budget with total suave discretion. Your date is none the wiser, and you get a great wine you can afford.
Okay, crisis averted. The wine is chosen. Now comes the tasting ritual.
The most theatrical part of the night.
The sommelier brings the bottle to the table. They present the label for your approval, they pull the cork with a flourish, and they pour a tiny 1-ounce splash into your massive glass. They step back and wait.
I think a lot of people panic right here. They think they're supposed to perform a deep, poetic, on-the-spot analysis of the vintage.
They really do.
They think they need to swirl it, close their eyes, and say, ah, yes, I am getting distinct notes of old leather, crushed blackberries, and a hint of Cuban cigar smoke.
That is perhaps the most common and hilarious misconception in all of dining.
So what is the point of the sip?
The purpose of this tasting ritual is absolutely not to determine if you personally enjoy the artistic flavor profile of the wine. You already bought it.
Right.
The sole purpose of that tiny sip is to check for a very specific, devastating chemical fault. You are checking to see if the wine is corked.
Meaning the wine has been contaminated by a specific fungus growing in a faulty cork. And if it is corked, our sources say it smells unmistakably like a damp basement or a wet dog.
Precisely. It is a musty, moldy, highly unpleasant odor that completely ruins the wine. It has nothing to do with whether the wine is good or bad stylistically. It means the bottle is chemically defective.
So your only job in that intimidating moment is to briefly swirl the glass to release the aromas, take a quick sniff to ensure it doesn't smell like a wet dog, and take a tiny sip to confirm.
That's it.
If it is fine, which it is 99% of the time, you absolutely do not need to provide tasting notes. You simply nod to the sommelier and use a polite phrase of approval, giving them permission to pour.
That's lovely, thank you. Or perfect, thank you very much.
That is a massive relief. That's lovely, thank you. That's all it takes. The wine is poured, the meal is finished, the espresso is consumed, the plates are completely cleared.
But the social performance is still not over.
We enter the final and perhaps most culturally fraught, anthropologically complex phase of the entire evening, the payment dance, and the graceful exit.
Settling the bill is an interaction laden with immense cultural nuances, deeply unspoken rules, and the potential for massive social awkwardness if it is handled poorly.
First things first, just acquiring the bill. At the basic survival level, we catch a waiter's eye from across the room and shout, "The bill, please," or we aggressively scribble in the air with an imaginary pen.
Please don't scribble in the air.
It's so tacky. But the proficient speaker starts with purely nonverbal cues. You finish your coffee, you neatly fold your heavy linen napkin and place it on the table. You catch the waiter's eye, and you give a subtle, knowing nod. In a good restaurant, that is usually enough.
But if you have to speak, you use incredibly polite, highly deferential language. You don't demand it immediately.
Right.
You might wait for the server to pass close by your table and say quietly, "Whenever you have a moment, we're ready to settle up." Or, "Could we have the bill when you're ready?"
Notice the profound shift in power dynamics here. Whenever you have a moment, you are explicitly acknowledging that they're busy professionals managing multiple tables, and you are actively choosing not to demand their immediate action.
And then the little black leather folder arrives at the table. It is placed right in the center.
And the dance begins, the payment dance. This is the highly choreographed battle of generosity that happens, particularly in British and North American culture, when two friends or colleagues are dining together.
The steps are very predictable.
Our sources break this down step by step, and it is fascinating. Person A reaches decisively for the leather folder and says, "Let me get this," or "This one's on me." Now, what is person B socially obligated to do in this exact moment, even if they secretly forgot their wallet at home?
Person B must instantly protest. It is a mandatory, hardwired step in the cultural choreography.
Mandatory protest.
Yes. They must say, "Oh no, you absolutely don't have to do that." Or, "Are you sure we really should split it?" If they do not offer this token protest, if they just say, "Okay, thanks," they risk appearing intensely greedy, presumptuous, or socially inept.
Right. The protest proves you aren't taking advantage of them. So person B protests. Then person A must escalate their generosity to override the protest. They say, "No, I insist. It was my pleasure."
The phrase, "I insist," is the ultimate linguistic trump card in this scenario. It signals that the offer is firm, genuine, and further arguing will cause an unnecessary scene.
At this point, the dance concludes. Person B gracefully accepts defeat, but they must immediately offer a crucial phrase of future reciprocation to close the loop.
"Well, thank you so much. That's incredibly kind of you. You must let me get the next one."
You must let me get the next one. If we connect this to the bigger picture, why is that specific phrase so vitally important? Let's say someone skips the entire payment dance. Person A says, "I've got it," and person B just says, "Cool, thanks," without a polite protest and without offering to get the next one. Does that actually damage the underlying friendship or relationship?
It absolutely can cause silent, lingering damage to the relationship.
Why is that?
Because paying for a shared meal is not merely about transferring monetary funds to a business. It is about managing an invisible ledger of social debt.
An invisible ledger.
If you allow someone to pay for your meal without offering a protest, and crucially, without promising to balance the scales in the future, you're willingly accepting a position of social indebtedness and submissiveness.
Wow, that's heavy.
The phrase, "you must let me get the next one," is a powerful tool that instantly rebalances that invisible debt. It transforms a single, isolated financial transaction into a binding promise of an ongoing reciprocal relationship. It effectively guarantees a future meeting. It is a profound type of social glue.
But what if you explicitly do not want a future meeting? What if it's a casual acquaintance, a mildly annoying coworker, or a bad first date, and you just want a clean break? You just want to pay for exactly what you consumed and leave.
In that case, you use the language of splitting. You say, "Shall we go Dutch?" meaning everyone pays strictly for themselves.
Or, if the consumption was wildly uneven, you proactively address the unfairness before resentment can build. You say, "Let's not split it evenly. I had the massive ribeye steak and 2 glasses of expensive wine, so I should definitely pay a larger share."
That display of proactive fairness demonstrates immense social awareness. It preempts any silent, toxic resentment from your dining companion who only ordered a side salad and drank tap water all night.
Okay, so the credit card is charged. Now we face the final boss of dining out, navigating the tip, the gratuity. This is where things get legally and socially messy because the terminology printed on the bottom of the receipt can be deliberately confusing.
Very confusing.
You might look down and see the phrase "service charge included." What does that actually mean?
If it says service charge included, it means the gratuity is already legally baked into the total price you see. You are under no obligation to pay a single penny more.
Okay, well, that's straightforward.
However, if you see service is not included, the burden falls entirely on you. You must calculate and leave an appropriate tip based on local customs.
But the trickiest, most ambiguous phrase of all is, discretionary service charge of 12.5% has been added.
Discretionary, that's the trap word.
It is. Discretionary means it is entirely optional. The restaurant has presumptuously added it to the bill for your convenience, but you have the absolute legal and social right to ask them to remove it if the service was genuinely terrible.
Though, as we discussed at length earlier, asking a waiter to remove their own tip requires deploying every single polite complaint strategy we just mastered.
You definitely don't just scream, "Take this off, you were terrible."
Yeah.
You have to use the scalpel again. You look at Daniel and say, "I'm so sorry to be a bother, but I'd prefer to handle the gratuity myself." And then you leave exactly what you feel is fair on the table.
Exactly. And once that final financial transaction is perfectly complete, the truly proficient speaker does not simply vanish into the night like a ghost. They execute a deliberate, graceful exit.
A graceful exit.
They make sure to catch deliberate eye contact with their waiter or the host at the front door. They offer a warm smile, and they leave a final, highly elevated compliment. Daniel, everything was absolutely superb tonight. Thank you so much for looking after us.
Everything was absolutely superb.
Yeah.
It is the perfect, elegant bow tied around the entire evening. It reinforces the deep rapport you started building hours ago when you first learned his name and asked about the specials.
And practically speaking, it guarantees that the next time you call that restaurant and use your softeners to ask, "I was hoping to book a quiet nook," they will remember you and they will bend over backwards to accommodate you.
So what does this all mean? We have journeyed all the way from the nuanced, incredibly soft request on the telephone. We've decoded the intense literary marketing of modern menus. We've co-created a meal through polite interrogation. We've praised unctuous bone marrow and ethereal phones. We've delicately performed surgery on a tough steak. We've silently negotiated a wine budget with a pointing finger. And we've successfully navigated the anthropological ritual of the payment dance.
We've covered a lot of ground.
What it means is that a restaurant visit, when executed by a highly proficient speaker, is never just a cold transaction where you exchange your currency for their calories.
No, it's a rich, complex tapestry of social strategy, collaborative exploration, and literary decoding. You, as the diner, transform from a passive consumer into an active participant.
You become the conductor.
You become the conductor of the entire experience, utilizing the deepest nuances of language, not just to communicate basic needs, but to navigate incredibly complex social landscapes with grace, confidence, and an immense amount of underlying power.
It is ultimately about empowering yourself. So the next time you're sitting there, you aren't just feeling out of your depth, sweating, hoping you say the right basic phrase just to get the chicken. You are in total control of the room, and everyone is happy that you are.
And this raises a deeply important question to leave you with today, a final thought to really mull over.
What's that?
If this specific kind of Machiavellian politeness, this strategic indirectness, and this highly structured framing yields such incredible power, control, and collaborative goodwill in a restaurant setting, how might applying this exact same C2 level linguistic strategy transform the outcomes in other truly high-stakes areas of your life?
Oh, wow. Like where?
Imagine applying the polite interrogation or the velvet trap of indirectness when asking your boss for a massive raise. Imagine using the Delta strategy, this isn't quite what I was expecting, when negotiating a complex business contract or when trying to resolve a deeply emotional conflict with your partner without making them defensive. The true power of the indirect request does not stop at the dining room doors.
That is a fascinating thought. Language really is the ultimate operating system. So the next time you find yourself sitting in a beautiful restaurant, staring down an intimidating menu full of foraged heritage vegetables and unctuous deconstructed desserts, remember, you have the linguistic tools to not just survive the meal, but to completely command the room.